I see one of my elders coming in. It is always encouraging, as these preachers know, to have good elderships and to have those men who appreciate and love God so much and want to encourage us in our works. You at Adamsville, you have been near and dear to the Hayes family for so many years, and for that we are greatly indebted. I am somewhat embarrassed to stand before some of these men who have been into the mission fields far more than I and who have done far much more in the work of the kingdom of God than I, but I'm privileged to be a part of this work, to be a part of the kingdom, and to be able to have opportunity to present God's word. We have in the last number of years had wonderful opportunities. Excuse my voice. Many of you know we have just finished yesterday a week at camp. And I told Flora I'd kind of sighed this morning as we were along the way and took a breath and let it out. And she said, "Well, are you ready for today?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to get my mind adjusted from speaking to teenagers all week to speaking to grown folks and speaking about these matters. And so I hope that we're able to present it in a way. You at Adamsville, when I decided to go to preaching school and in the works in which I've been involved, you have supported me wholeheartedly. You have supported me financially and spiritually in every avenue that you can and that you have, and we are indebted for that. And I want us to understand as we look at this, reaching the Far East, and we'll look at a little history and kind of how I ended up there. So I can speak concerning the works of other men, but I know better the work in which I've been involved, and Ronnie wanted me to address one area and one country in particular that really just won my heart. And I desire to spend as much time possible in this part of the world and hopefully to reach the lost. But what you at Adamsville, as well as all involved in the church who are good and godly and faithful, what you need to understand, you may never leave the country in which you live. You may never leave the boundaries of the United States of America. But addressing those here at Adamsville, through me and through these other men, through Brother Jonathan Winchester who just walked in, you go with us. The works in which we are involved, we may be the ones flying, we may be the ones, our boots may be the boots on the ground there, but you are involved. And I want us to look at a number of pictures this morning, and the vast majority of the pictures that you will see, they'll not be shocking, they will just be pictures of people. And I think that's vital for you to meet the individuals you are teaching. Because that's really what it boils down to, isn't it? If we think of 7 billion, some closing in on the 8 billion world's population now, souls. And I know that's what this seminar is about. It is about the souls of those individuals. Reaching the Far East. And some of you remember the Hayes family when we were here in the late 60s. We moved, and if memory serves correctly, about the summer of 69. Well, 2 years prior to that, Brother Ira Rice Jr. began a Bible college in the country of Singapore. When Brother Rice went into that part of the world, Singapore, unfortunately, was enduring and going through some of the things that we did here at the same time in the United States. They were having great racial upheaval. Brother Rice and his family were in peril. And there, you may have read some of his material, and you may remember when he was there. On one occasion, Sister Rice tells that 2 or 3 days they had been in a lockdown situation where they were having to remain in their home to stay safe. Brother Rice had waited as long as he could, and he said, "I'm going out to check on the brethren." Sister Rice said, "Before you do, you sign this will." He did, and then he went out. in that part of the world, you speak the name Ira Rice Jr., as we would say in Alabama, their ears perk up. You have their attention. They respect Brother Rice. They respected his teaching, and we are able today still to stand on his shoulders and to go in those parts of the world and to preach the gospel. We left here in 69. In 78, Uncle Sam had me in North Carolina, where I married Flora, and we remained there until the year 2005. If you've not been to North Carolina, Brother Reagan will tell you it is a mission field. It is a mission field stateside. And it is, and it remains that. And I appreciate Brother Reagan being in that area, and he and his family and all that work in that area. And as you know, every area in the United States, we're not blessed, or they're not blessed as we are here in this area, as strong as the Lord's church is. In 2005, that's when I decided to go to Memphis School of Preaching. In 2005, I met a man and his family who were Chinese, but they were from the country of Malaysia. Brother Peter Chin and his wife, Pui Fun, and their sons, Willie and Andy, they had left Malaysia. They came to Memphis School of Preaching to better know God's Word, to know how to teach it better, so that he could go back then, not to Malaysia, not to his home, but to Singapore, and to begin teaching as an instructor at the Four Seas Bible College, the school which had been begun in 67 by Brother Rice. 2 years later, Brother Peter Chin went there, and the school understood this. He went there to teach and then to become the president of the school, which he serves as now. It was there shortly after that Brother Chin contacted me and asked if I would teach online and be a part of that school, in which I am pleased to do that. It was in 2006, while still in school, that I first traveled with Brother Billy Bland. He, of course, works with the Far East Missions, goes into Russia, goes into the Far East, all over in all these different countries. Brother Rice had planted many congregations in that area of the world, very few elderships. So you're looking some 40 and 50 years later down the road, congregations begun, but no elderships. I had served as a few years as an elder in North Carolina, and Brother Bland knew that, and he asked if I would go to Klang, Malaysia, and teach in a seminar there. And a weekend, and it lasted 3 days, and brethren from many congregations came. And after each session, I would open up the session for question and answer period. And here's what I love to tell my brethren here in the United States. Do you know the questions they asked in Malaysia concerning elders and elderships? Well, the next time that Ronnie teaches a series of lessons, or the elders have a series of lessons here in Adamsville, and then the questions that you ask are exactly the same questions they asked. Why? Well, I know this much, they're reading the same book. And we teach the same gospel there, and it holds true around the world. Therefore, we study the gospel here. We go anywhere in the world, and we teach the soul-saving gospel of Jesus Christ. In 2007, I graduated, or was soon to graduate, from Memphis School of Preaching. I was talking to Ronnie, and he was traveling with Brother Eula McCaleb. And Ronnie says, Brother McCaleb wants to know, do you know anything about the congregation in Logan Martin? No, I do not. They're looking a preacher. And he thinks that would be a good place for you to go. Well, when Brother Eula McCaleb speaks, Tim likes to listen. So that's the way we ended up there, and thus that brings us somewhat to this day and this time in which we find ourselves. You know the text that Christ said, go into all the world and preach the gospel. Christ in Matthew said, go you therefore and teach all nations. That's what we're talking about. That's what you have been discussing in this series throughout the years in talking about 7B. If you were to open your Bibles, in which we study over the last few years in Bible camp, we've been going through the book of Acts. And if you were to notice the text in Acts 14 and verse 22, when Paul and Barnabas were finishing that first missionary journey, they had gone into the areas of Iconium. They had gone into the cities of Lystra and Derbe. And they were finishing up as far as they were going to travel. And they were soon to head back to Jerusalem and then to Antioch. They were going to go home. And Paul and Barnabas, they decide, well, let's go back to the cities where we have been, confirming the saints and exhorting them to be strengthened to grow in the faith. Now, brethren, that's exactly my intent when I teach in the United States or when I go overseas. Because there are brethren around the world that we need to confirm and to exhort, that we need to strengthen, to confirm, to strengthen, to exhort, to draw near. To draw near. It's the beginning of that word para, to draw parallel, to bring close. Well, we do that through word, yes, but we also do that through our very presence. You know how much it means to talk to someone on the phone, but then if we are in the actual presence, how much better that is for us. That's what we attempt to do when we go into these areas in the world. I apologize for this picture. It was very hastily taken. You cannot really see this young man. This is taken at the Four Seas Bible College each year in November. They graduate. And so that's when we try to be in that part of the world. That's when we try to be there. Four Seas Bible College, I love it dearly. It was a great work begun by Brother Ira Rice, and it was begun purposely in Singapore. To me, the more I understand this area of the world, the better I understand and appreciate Brother Rice and his wisdom. This, you can look now at Singapore. Now remember, when Brother Rice went there, it was a very, 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 very poor country, underdeveloped country, when he and Sister Rice and their children went into that area. Now, we could call it the hub of the wheel, especially in that part of the world. They produce nothing except money. And in that sense, they are the hub of the wheel. And so when you talk to individuals around, and Brother Rice, if memory serves correctly, wanted to go somewhere where English was spoken. And so Singapore, I know I do not speak English very well, but I speak Alabama pretty good. But English is not so good. Probably 90% of the population in Singapore speaks English, and most of them as their first language. Then you also will have the Chinese speaking, the Mandarin primarily speaking part of the population. Interestingly, there are two primary congregations in Singapore when you think of them. There's the Jurong congregation, and there's a 3-story building there that Brother Rice was able to acquire. And in that 3-story building, there is the Mandarin-speaking Jurong Church of Christ. On the second floor, there is the English-speaking Jurong Church of Christ. And on the third floor, you find the Four Seas College of Bible and Missions, which houses the students. They have their dorm rooms there. The students come as from their countries. And what's interesting, in the years that this school has been in operation, some 19 different countries from around that part of the world. Students have come from those countries. Students have come from China, and we'll look at that in detail in just a moment. Mainland China, communist China. Now you say, well, Tim, what does that have to do? Well, this young man, and I wish you could see his face better. He graduated last year from Four Seas Bible College. He is Chinese. He is from mainland China. He is living back in mainland China, teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, what's interesting about this man, he did not grow up as a Christian. He grew up as an orphan. Orphan because his parents in their homes made fireworks. There was an accident, a terrible accident. The home was burned to the ground. All were killed except for him, except for this young man. And he was burned severely, severely deformed. He had made a couple of trips to the United States for reconstruction surgery. This young man had been orphaned, and this young man had been left on the streets to die. He, in this orphanage, run by the church, overseen by the church, overseen by Christians. This was the first time he had ever truly known love of another individual. Everyone else shunned him. The society as a whole shunned him. To them, he was refuge, to be cast to the side. Someone from Four Seas was there and said, "You need to come to Four Seas, learn to preach the gospel." He came to Four Seas, was a wonderful student of mine, and has since returned last year and is now working and overseeing some of those orphanages. He will be able to reach young people that you and I could never, that the general population could never reach. He will be able to reach and to teach them the gospel of Jesus Christ, thus spreading the word, thus spreading your work further throughout communist China. Oh, I pray that you can begin to see my excitement in these works, my joy. The Apostle Paul, when he went into the city of Athens, he looked about and saw a city wholly given to idolatry. Brother Reagan, Brother Gerganus, and these other men will tell you, when you go into these cities, you see cities and nations wholly given to idolatry. Now, we're not talking about the idolatry of which we normally see here in the United States. Sometimes we fool ourselves and say, well, we're not given to idolatry. We're a little naive on that, if that's what we believe. We may not have the idols, as did they, but it's idolatry. In China, the idolatry is everywhere and readily seen. The temples in which you go. It's interesting to me when we enter these temples, and often you'll see the flowers and the beauty and maybe a very poor population. If memory serves me correctly, this statue is right at 30 feet tall, made of white jade, and weighs over 11 tons. Now these people in the temple in which it sits in Shanghai, China, is totally made from teak. I don't know the last time you bought any teak wood to put on your yacht. It's a little pricey. These are hand-carved, hand-worked furnishings around, beautiful beyond imagination. And one's mind has to go back to Athens. One's mind has to go back to Corinth and to Ephesus and all these cities when we think of the temples which our brethren in the first century were seeing. I was standing in a Chinese temple in Singapore just a few years back. I'm standing there, and the monks are inside, and they're chanting their chants, and they're playing their instruments, and the people gather around, and they're burning their incense, and the incense are just sticks about this long, and they'll set them fire, and they smoke, of course, and then they hold them in their hands, and they're bowing. I honestly don't understand all of it, nor do I begin to understand, but I understand they're worshiping some way. They are worshiping the way they've been taught. Hold on to that thought, and we'll come back to it in just a minute. They are worshiping what they understand. They're worshiping what they believe. Therefore, they're chanting and they're bowing. The church building, the auditorium, was still open air. But guess what? It's a little warm in Singapore. It's a little warm today, and it's a little warm 6 months because the weather never changes there. It'll be 90-something degrees, 100% humidity, and some days, I think Sister Rice said in Singapore you have 3 kinds of weather. Hot, really hot, and oh, I'm going to die. Well, that's the way it was that day. I'm up, just pouring, sweat pouring off. I'm smelling something burn. I said, well, there goes lunch. I'm hearing bells ring, dong, dong. I don't know what's going on. After services, I went out and looked next door, a Chinese temple. They're burning their incense. That's what I'm smelling. And every time someone makes a contribution, they ring the bell. Dong. Well, that's what I was hearing. The whole world, the whole city, the whole state, the whole nation in that part of the world is given. You go around and oftentimes you'll find little red boxes about half the width of the table here, stand that high. And they'll be up on stands, and inside them will be fruit or different foods given. They'll be burning incense, each one. And often what it is, most families will have their little temple where they'll be worshiping their gods. Now, when the Apostle Paul saw the city wholly given to idolatry, what did he do? How did he begin to teach them? What did he use? Brethren, he used the gospel of Jesus Christ. He taught them of the one true God, the God who made all, the God in whom we live and move and have our very being, without whom we do not exist. That's what we still find in many of these places in the world today. One God after another. And they vary often, but it's the same thing. You have those monks who were in this temple, who teach, who live this life, who propagate these false doctrines. This tower here, it must have been maybe 50 feet tall. And behind that is the temple in which you just saw these gods placed. The woodwork that you see, those columns are solid teak. The people gathered around, there were coal oil fires burning, and they would start their incense by those coal oil fires, and so it was very smoky around the area, and you'll see different ones in different positions, and some are bowing and some are walking about. But also another thing they do, they have coins that they receive at the temple that they can buy, and they flip those coins and try to get them inside that tower, worshiping God, their God, some way. I don't understand, again, what is taking place. I just know those are things that we do not read of in the Bible. Not the way in which we are to properly worship the one true God. This lady with her hands, you can see the young lady in the middle of the picture, the actual incense, the sticks of incense. And then to the right, the lady exactly in the middle, she has the incense in her hand, and they'll bow back and forth. Now, I was standing in the temple, and I can't remember, maybe the temple of 10,000 gods there in Singapore. Huge building. And there will be gods just a few inches high, and then there'll be massive gods. And they'll be inset, most of them around the walls and on the floor and round about. I'm standing there watching these ongoings as these people worship, and they freely invite you in. As they're worshiping, it does not bother them. And so I'm standing there watching this, and an older gentleman walks up beside me, and he has a little boy, probably 4, maybe 5 years old with him. The older gentleman has his incense, and he's standing there beside me, and he's bowing back and forth, and he's making his chant, and the little boy's just standing there watching the ongoings, and the older gentleman goes on for a number of moments, and all of a sudden he looks and he realizes the little boy's just standing. He reaches down very gently and passes the little boy on, says a little something. Next thing I know, the older gentleman goes back to worshiping again. Guess what the little boy's doing then? Brothers and friends, they're teaching their young people. You know the question. What are we teaching ours? They're teaching their young people to worship their gods. What are we teaching ours? You know Brother Billy Bland, I love him dearly. I think Ronnie had invited him to come. He was unable to come. I wished he had, because Brother Bland has been in this work many more years than I, and he's far better at it than I. But I love to travel with Brother Bland. Sometimes it gets a little interesting, sometimes it's a little difficult, not because of Brother Bland, just situations around the world. Not everybody wants you as an American, not everyone in this world wants you as a child of God, as a Christian, to come to their country. You understand that. Especially the few communist countries that are still remaining in this world. They really take a dim view of that. In the last few times that I have gone into China, they began to ask you questions, and they began to make you sign a letter, or they began to send you a questionnaire. The last one that they sent me was stating, I will not perform any duties associated with my work. I could not sign that. There are a lot of things I may be able to hedge around and kind of work around and get by. That one I could not. So what you have to do is, of course, apply for a visa. And that's when the questionnaire comes. You do not want to have your visa denied officially. So rather than that taking place, I just called them and said, hey, I tell you what, how about sending my packet back to me? I've changed my travel plans. In the years that I had been preaching in China, also, as Ronnie stated, in Four Seas Bible College a few years ago, Brother Peter Chin asked if I would teach by Skype. I said, great, yes, I will. What is Skype? I said, if you teach me, they said, brother, you can do it. I said, okay. So this little Alabama boy, Monday night, this past week, we were at Indian Creek Youth Camp. The internet service was not too hot down there, so I was able to get permission to go into the church building there in Parrish. They have great internet service, so anywhere I can get internet, I can teach. My classes go from 8:30 at night to 11:30 at night. For them, it's 9:30 on Tuesday morning or Thursday morning and goes to 12:30. They're running off to lunch. I'm getting off, stumbling, going to bed. So I tell them just enjoy their lunch and pray that I have a good rest. 3 hours. Presently, we're in the quarter where I am teaching minor prophets. They are set up on either the exact same or a very similar curriculum to Memphis School of Preaching. So it's college level courses. Now understand, these college level courses are taught in English. Not everybody there came from America, you realize. 19 different countries, none of them being America. That's impressive in me. When's the last time you took a college level course? When's the last time you took a college level course in a second language? That's what these people come to do. And that's what they're willing to do and able to do. Now, I understand that English is, when you grade their test and you grade their papers, they do papers just as you college people do papers. I have a 10 to 12 page paper on the minor prophets that's due come July the 8th. They'll have it ready. They'll email me those copies. These individuals are able to go back into these countries and teach the gospel. Why? Because they're going home. Last time I attempted to go into China, these are pillars upon which they will bow before their gods and worship. Last time I attempted to go back into China, I had to ask for my visa packet to be returned because they were about to reject it officially. I had students who had graduated and had gone back home and gone back to Vietnam. I know some men here served our military in Vietnam. I know some of these things are near and dear to your heart. Some may harbor ill will. When I went to Vietnam, came back, a man who had served in the military, retired from the military, was not a member of the Lord's church. His son and daughter-in-law worships with us. He asked his son, do you think it would be okay if I would come and listen to Tim talk about his work in Vietnam? Here's the man's statement after I finished that night. He said, it's time for me to get over that. Will you accept this financial support to help you go? Brethren, that's why we live the lives that we live. This is gospel. It's not me, it's not you. It's the gospel of Christ that will change the hearts and the mind. Those my age and older, you lived for some time, the 6 o'clock news was about this part of the world when we were in war. Why did we go there? Well, we would understand now there are over 90 million residents in the country of Vietnam. And I was fortunate to go all the way to the southern tip, to this Can Tho. I said it every way under the sun until I got there, and they finally said, Brother Hayes, it is Can Tho. I said, okay, well, that's what we'll call it then. And so Can Tho is a city in South Vietnam. Some people say, oh, you were able to go into South. Well, you know, it's all one country. There is not a South and a North. There's Southern Vietnam is where we went. 1.2 million people in the city of Can Tho. Can Tho is located on the Mekong River. Again, those my age and older, even if you did not serve in the military in Vietnam, you remember the name of the Mekong River. You remember the name, the Mekong Delta. Much fighting happened in that area, in those areas. Of the 1.2 million in Can Tho, we were in, for lack of a better term, in the area of a suburb, Puan. 20 Christians. Now, I think if you go, the day I flew in, the brethren, Billy Bland and Tim Burrows, they were able to go into China. I said, brethren, it's obvious you do not look enough like preachers, or else they would reject you as well. But they were able to go into mainland China, and I went with them to Shanghai, and then I took a hop and went into, as is known now, Ho Chi Minh City. You men who served there knew it as Saigon. Flew into Saigon. Got in there late Saturday night. Young man, one of my students, met me, which was very nice to see because I spake no Vietnamese and I knew no one in that part of the world other than those few whom I had taught. He met me, and then we jumped on a bus and rode for 4 hours to Can Tho. It was about 3 o'clock Sunday morning. We got in there, and he said, Brother Hayes, I will come by and get you for breakfast in the morning. I said, great, because I'm hungry. And so just a couple of hours he came by. I was waiting. I went downstairs, and Vietnam in the early mornings and late evening was very nice. Temperature was nice, cools off. It is very enjoyable. I was sitting there in a little cafe at the bottom of the hotel waiting on my ride, and everyone's drinking iced coffee. I'm not really a proponent of iced coffee. I like hot coffee, and I like it often. She brought me to set up for the iced coffee, and I kind of turned my nose up, I guess, a little bit at it, and one little girl spoke one word of English. She said, hot? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, cafe none. I said, yes. Floor warns me about agreeing with things I do not understand. I hope that I understood that she was saying hot coffee, and that's what she brought me. So each morning, I typed that in my phone in the notes. I'm sure it's spelled incorrectly, but I can understand it. My ride showed up on his scooter. I jumped on the back of the scooter, and off we went. We had pho. I don't know. It's delicious. As my daddy used to say, the difference between a good meal and a great meal is about 2 or 3 hours. You wait long enough, a lot of things get good. This was beef broth, rice noodles, mint leaves, little pieces of beef, delicious. Right out of the bowl, it was great. We then went to worship service. I must admit, that was the first day I ever preached barefooted. In many of the Asian countries, of course, before you enter, you take your shoes off. The pictures that you're seeing, this lady, I did not know her, but I love faces. I think we see a lot. I think maybe we should see ourselves in their faces. Maybe we should see our souls and their souls in their faces. This is just standing. She was there on the street corner. Matter of fact, I was seated at a table and she came by. And I thought, really, of you who have been in Vietnam, that probably represented Vietnam, that hat which they wear. This purple room, and I'm colorblind, I think it's purple, but this purple room is the church building where we met. This room, and I counted the tiles on the floor, was 12 feet by 12 feet with the stairs going up inside. We had 65 people in a 12 by 12 room. You can see there are many children there, and they're there for a reason. They're there to hear the gospel, but they're also there to fill their bellies. Because the church, each one of these members, very poor, but they come together on Sunday nights, Saturday nights, the ladies will, and they'll prepare the meal for the next day to feed these children. Because they know they're going to be there, and they know there's a need, and they know that through that one day they'll be able to present the gospel to them. Now understand, you're in communist Vietnam. The communists control the country, the government. The Buddhists control the country. The church has already had to move and give up one building because the Buddhists said, hey, these people are in there worshiping something, doing something, and they need to stop. And guess what you do when the Buddhists tell you that? You stop. So now the building sits empty, and they are in this, which serves also as one of the members' home. But these children, these faces, just imagine if you were there, imagine your grandchildren, imagine your children, imagine yourself being there, and you're hungry. After service, they had the little molded plastic chairs, so immediately after service is in, they pick the chairs up, and then these children, they're not, if you notice, the way they're seated, that's the way they stay. The ladies and the young women would put the children on one of the tiles on the square, and that child never moved. You didn't have to worry about them up running around and mayhem turning loose. They're sitting there because they know they're going to eat. And the pot there that you see in the middle is just one of the big pots of rice. You know, rice is inexpensive. They had cabbage soup in the bowl. That's what they drink. They eat the cabbage soup with their meal, and that also serves as their drink. They had greens. You ask them what kind of vegetables? Green. Or they'll say veggie. And I said, okay, I can eat veggies. That's good. And if they have any meat, they will also serve that. Brethren, this is part of why we go. This is the Mekong River. Some of you men who are served there, it may be that you remember, and I know that you do, these types of boats. We would go during the week. At night, I would teach classes there at that same place. Members of the church would come in. Also, during the week, they teach free of charge English. That's very pricey in that part of the world. Everyone wants to learn English. So the church members teach English to these other members, and then they're able to pick ones out that they think they can trust enough to teach the gospel to without being turned into the government. All right? Very quickly, these are just individuals. These are some of the Christians there. Here's another issue. Most of the Christians in Canton are very young. The Asian society frowns upon young people teaching older people. So when someone with some age goes in there, especially an American, it gets their attention. We each day would go out and visit individuals who had visited worship. This older gentleman here, you know, guess what? I kind of stick out in that part of the world. I look a little different than everyone wants to have their pictures made with the American. This is the house in which he lived. Most of the homes that we visited were very similar to this. The original home is the building to the right. The second half was an addition. Now there's 2 or 3 families or generations living in that dirt floor for the most part. This is the kitchen area, ladies. These are the ovens and stoves in which they cook. They are formed clay stoves. You build the fire, put the pot up on top. Whatever they cook is cooked in that manner. These are some of the children. You'll notice in the back sometimes big urns. They're water pots. They have a fantastic water filtration system here. They split bamboo, run it along as gutters underneath the eaves of the house. The rain runs then down the split bamboo to those water pots, and on the end, if lucky, they'll have something like cheesecloth tied on the end of it for their filtration system. This is a member of the Lord's church. Very poor people. They find fruit trees and plants out in the wild. They'll transplant them. He'll then raise them on his farm and sell them to make the few dollars with which they exist. There's one footpath turning into a bridge. Just very interesting, just very crudely made, but works wonderfully. Don't lust after my legs now. Rice to the right. Some of you men did not laugh when I said that because you've been through these rice paddies. We would carry the scooters as far as we could go down the roads, and then we'll go up the paths until they could go no further. And of course, they're all wearing sandals. I was not that bright now on sandals. We would go then into the rice paddies, and I would have to, as we say in Alabama, roll my britches legs up and take my socks and shoes off and go until we reach higher ground. This house sits on the edge of the Mekong River, on the edge of this rice paddy. 2 or 3 months out of the year, the Mekong River comes out of its banks, as we read, takes place, and oftentimes we read in the Bible. Well, I asked this gentleman, I said, his family, I said, what do you do? Now, understand, their dining room table and their easy boy recliner and their bed looks like this, because it's one piece of furniture, it's wood, and then when it's bedtime, they'll roll out the grass mat and sleep on it as a family. And if you sit, they invite you in, please sit, they want you to eat, they want you to drink, and so you'll sit with them, as you saw me with that older gentleman. I said, what takes place when the water comes up? It'll come in 2-3 feet deep into their house. He laughed, he said, we stay in bed and fish. I said, well, I guess you have to have that kind of attitude if you're going to survive. I had to call home and tell Flora, I took this picture that we were millionaires. Come off the airport there, or come into the airport, and you exchange some money, and that may be just $100, was 2 million Vietnam Dong, just over $2 million. So when they started paying me in $500,000 bills, I said, this is the country in which I need to live. I loved the children. They were beautiful children. They were well behaved. They were great opportunities. This is the kitchen area of the church building there, in the home where they prepared their meals. Very quickly, I just want to go through this, and I want to get to one in particular. I love that. I thought that was one of the greatest pictures. I had that old gentleman there. 2 stories, and then I've got to quit. This older gentleman, and I did not learn this until last year, the hut in which he and his wife lived, and I think he is 70, in his early 70s. They had gone out back and they had dug a trench back there, and they would catch small fish, and then they would transfer them from the river into his ditch. This man had been raising fish for 7 years, and he was begging me to stay because he wanted to kill one of those fish and me to eat it that night. I don't know about you, Brandon, that just about broke my heart to realize what they were giving. To see these, that's his wife, and as we were in their homes. This is just a gentleman on the street. These are souls. I pray that you're seeing the faces, but I pray that you're seeing inside and that you're seeing the souls. Little boy that attends the services there, great young man. This is the family that lived in the house. He's the one that said, we just stay in bed and fish. This lady, this lady, I was in her home. She was 75 years old. Talking with them, and the young man, my student with me, said, she's a widow. And so I said, well, how long, what had happened to her husband. He was a guerrilla fighter. He fought with the Americans and died in the war. This was my thought. I said, please explain to her I apologize on behalf of our government that we as a country were not able to do more for her people. Many times when I go to bed at night, I see this lady's face. I told my wife when we returned home, I said, I had to apologize to this lady one time. I don't want to have to stand before God and apologize because I failed to take the gospel to her. Rather than the faces you've seen, there's just a few, handful of what you're doing in this country. The reasons why I go, just in Canton, 1.2 million reasons. That's why we do what we do. Thank you very much.